Lieutenant Hannah Kim stared at the bright green lines dancing across her computer screen. The science vessel Horizon had been floating near Proxima Station for 3 days, collecting data about space dust and cosmic radiation. It was supposed to be a boring mission, the kind that made young officers fall asleep at their posts. But today was different. "Ma'am, you need to see this," called out Park Min-ho from his engineering station. His voice carried an excitement that made everyone on the bridge turn around. Min-ho was usually quiet, the type who spoke only when something was truly important. Hannah walked over to his station, her boots making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The Horizon was an older ship, not fancy like the new military vessels, but it was reliable. She had been its commander for 2 years now, and she knew every sound it made. "What do you have for me, Min-ho?" The young engineer pointed at his screen, where strange patterns of energy were moving like waves. "These signals started appearing about an hour ago. I've never seen anything like them. They're not coming from any human technology." Lee Somin, the ship's medical officer, looked up from her own station. She had been reading through supply reports, but now her attention was fully focused on the conversation. "Are you saying these signals are from aliens?" Hannah felt her heart beat faster. In all her years in space, she had dreamed of this moment. Humanity had been searching for other intelligent life for decades, sending out radio signals and exploring distant planets, but they had never found definitive proof that they were not alone in the universe. "Let me hear them," Hannah said. Min-ho pressed a few buttons, and suddenly the bridge filled with strange sounds. They were not like anything humans had ever made. The sounds seemed to pulse with rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, but there were also high-pitched tones that reminded Hannah of someone crying for help. "Computer, analyze these signals," Hannah commanded. The ship's artificial intelligence began working, processing the strange transmissions. After a few moments, text appeared on the main screen. "Pattern suggests distress communication. Source appears to be multiple vessels in combat situation, approximately 2.7 light hours from current position." Somin stood up from her chair. "Combat situation? You mean there's a battle happening out there?" Before Hannah could answer, the bridge doors slid open and Captain Kang walked in. He was an older man with grey hair and tired eyes, someone who had seen too much during his long career in space. He looked at the screens and frowned. "What's all this excitement about?" he asked. "Sir, we've detected what appears to be alien communications," Hannah explained. "The computer thinks it's a distress call from ships that are fighting each other." Captain Kang's expression became serious. He walked to the main screen and studied the data for several minutes. The bridge was completely quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines and the strange alien sounds still coming through the speakers. "Lieutenant Kim," the captain said finally, "you know our orders. We're here to collect scientific data, not to get involved in situations we don't understand. These could be dangerous aliens. They might see us as enemies." Hannah felt frustrated. This was the discovery that every human had dreamed about, and they were just going to ignore it. "But sir, what if they need help? What if this is our chance to make peaceful contact with another species?" The captain shook his head. "And what if it's our chance to start a war we can't win? We don't know anything about these creatures. We don't know their technology, their intentions, or their capabilities." Min-ho spoke up quietly. "The signals are getting weaker, ma'am. Whatever's happening out there, it might be ending soon." Hannah looked at the data again. Someone was fighting for their lives in the darkness of space, and she had the power to help them. But she also had orders to follow and a crew to protect. The alien ship appeared on their main screen like a wounded giant floating in the darkness. Hannah had never seen anything like it. The vessel was massive, at least 3 times bigger than the Horizon, with curved surfaces that looked almost alive. But what made her heart race were the creatures crawling all over its hull. "My God," whispered Somin, staring at the display. "What are those things?" The creatures looked like living shadows with too many arms and legs. They moved across the alien ship's surface like spiders, tearing at the metal with claws that seemed to absorb light. Wherever they touched, the ship's hull turned black and began to dissolve. "Min-ho, can you get us a closer look?" Hannah asked. The engineer worked his controls, and the image zoomed in. Now they could see inside the alien ship through holes that had been torn in its walls. Blue-skinned beings standing taller than any human were fighting desperately against the shadow creatures. These aliens moved with incredible speed and strength, wielding weapons that fired beams of bright energy, but they were losing. "The blue ones are definitely the ones sending the distress signals," Minho reported. "I'm picking up their communications. The computer is trying to translate, but it's having trouble." Captain Kang stood behind them, watching the battle with a grim expression. "This is exactly why we shouldn't get involved. We're watching a war between species we don't understand." Hana couldn't take her eyes off the screen. One of the blue, aliens larger than the others, and wearing what looked like armor, was surrounded by shadow creatures. He was fighting bravely, but there were too many of them. As she watched, one of the creatures struck him with a long needle-like appendage. The alien warrior stumbled and fell to his knees. "Sir, we have to help them," Hana said urgently. "Those shadow things are killing them all." "Lieutenant, I've already told you our position on this matter." But as they watched, something happened that changed everything. The shadow creatures suddenly turned toward their ship. Through the darkness of space, dozens of glowing red eyes focused on the horizon. "They've detected us," Minho said, his voice tight with fear. "The shadow creatures know we're here." The captain's face went pale. "All engines full reverse. Get us out of here." "Sir, wait," Hana said. "If we run now, those blue aliens will definitely die, and those shadow things already know about us. What if they follow us back to human space?" Before the captain could respond, several shadow creatures detached from the alien ship and began floating toward them through space. They moved without any visible means of propulsion, like nightmares come to life. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of energy drain from those creatures," Minho reported. "They're affecting our power systems just by getting close." Hana made a decision that would change everything. "Minho, Somin, get to Shuttle Bay 2. We're going to help those aliens. Lieutenant Kim, I order you to stand down," Captain Kang said firmly. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't do that." Hana was already moving toward the exit. "If those shadow things can drain our power from a distance, running won't save us. Our only chance is to help the blue aliens win this fight." In the shuttle bay, Hana quickly checked their emergency medical supplies while Minho prepared the small rescue craft. Somin gathered her medical equipment, her hands shaking slightly. "Are we really doing this?" Somin asked. "Flying into a battle between aliens?" "Those blue beings called for help," Hana replied. "As representatives of humanity, we have a responsibility to answer that call." The shuttle launched from the horizon and headed toward the alien battle. As they got closer, the shadow creatures became even more terrifying. They were not solid like normal living things, but seemed to be made of darkness itself, constantly shifting and changing shape. The blue alien's ship was dying. Entire sections had been consumed by the shadow creatures, and the survivors were trapped in what looked like the command center. Through the transparent walls, Hana could see the large alien warrior she had noticed. Before, he was lying on the floor, his blue skin turning gray. "There," she pointed. "We need to get to that chamber." Minho piloted their shuttle through a hole in the alien ship's hull. The moment they entered, Hana felt something wrong in the air. It was cold and seemed to pull at her thoughts, making it hard to concentrate. They found the wounded alien warrior surrounded by others of his kind. Up close, they were even more impressive, standing 7 feet tall with skin that seemed to shimmer like metal. Their faces were angular and noble, with large eyes that showed intelligence and pain. The dying warrior looked at them with surprise. When he tried to speak, strange clicking sounds came from his throat, but somehow Hana understood the meaning. "Who are you, small ones?" Somin knelt beside the wounded alien warrior, her medical scanner beeping frantically. The device was designed for human biology, but the readings it showed were terrifying. The alien's vital signs were dropping fast, and strange dark veins were spreading across his blue skin like poison. "Hana, I don't know how to help him," Somin said, her voice shaking. "His body chemistry is completely different from ours. Whatever those shadow creatures did to him, it's shutting down his nervous system." The alien warrior's eyes focused on Hana with difficulty. When he spoke, his voice was deep and resonated through the chamber. "I am Kalveth, war leader of the Veltari. You should not have come here, small beings. The Nexus will consume you, as they consume all life. Other Veltari warriors gathered around them, their weapons still glowing from the recent battle. They were magnificent creatures, with skin that seemed to be made of living metal and eyes that burned with inner fire. But Hannah could see the fear in those eyes, something she never expected to see in such powerful beings. "We're here to help," Hannah said simply. "My name is Hannah Kim, and we're humans. We heard your distress call." Culveth tried to sit up, but collapsed. "Back down." "Humans? We have never heard of your species. You are small and soft, not built for war. The Nexus will tear you apart." Somin was studying her scanner readings, comparing them to human medical data. "Hannah, look at this. His nervous system works differently than ours, but the basic structure is similar. The toxin from those shadow creatures is blocking neural pathways, like a poison that stops the brain from talking to the body. Can you treat it? Maybe. In humans, we use neural stimulants to bypass blocked pathways, but I don't know if it would work on him." Culveth's breathing was becoming labored. "Do not waste your time, human. The Nexus poison has no cure. I have seen thousands of my people die this way. Soon my mind will be consumed and my body will serve the darkness." Hannah looked at Somin. "Try it. What's the worst that could happen?" "I could kill him faster," Somin replied honestly. "And if we do nothing, he dies anyway." Hannah turned to Culveth. "Will you let us try to save you?" The alien warrior studied her face for a long moment. "You would risk yourselves for a stranger? Of another species?" "Yes." Something in her voice convinced him. Culveth nodded slowly. "Then do what you must, human Hannah Kim." Somin prepared a neural stimulant injection, modifying the dosage for the alien's larger body. Her hands were steady, despite her fear. "This might hurt," she warned. The injection went into Culveth's arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his body convulsed, and the other Veltari warriors raised their weapons, thinking the humans had attacked their leader. "Wait," Hannah said, urgently. "Give it time." Suddenly, the dark veins on Culveth's skin began to fade. His breathing became stronger, and his eyes cleared. He sat up slowly, staring at his hands in amazement. "Impossible," he whispered. "The poison is retreating. How did you do this?" Somin was looking at her scanner with excitement. "It worked! The neural pathways are opening up again. Your nervous system is fighting off the toxin." Meanwhile, Minho had been examining the Veltari weapon systems. "These energy weapons are incredible," he told Hannah, "but they're running out of power. The shadow creatures damaged their main power core. Can you fix it?" "I think so. Human engineering might be simpler than theirs, but sometimes simple solutions work best." As Minho worked on the weapons, Culveth slowly stood up. He was even more impressive at full height, towering over the humans like a blue giant. "You have saved my life, humans. This is a debt that cannot be repaid." "Tell us about these Nexus creatures," Hannah said. "What are we really fighting?" Culveth's expression darkened. "They are ancient evil older than my civilization. The Nexus consume not just flesh and blood, but the very essence of thought itself. They feed on neural energy, growing stronger with every mind they devour." "How long have they been attacking your people?" "Centuries. They appeared in our space, long ago, consuming world after world. We have fought them across the galaxy, but they are like a disease that spreads wherever they go. They turn the consumed into more of themselves, creating an endless army of darkness." Somin looked horrified. "They eat thoughts? How is that possible?" "We do not fully understand it ourselves," Culveth admitted. "But we know that emotional energy makes them stronger. Fear, anger, hatred, these feelings feed them. That is why they are so dangerous to my people." "What do you mean?" "The Veltari are warriors. We fight with passion and fury. But against the Nexus, our greatest strength becomes our weakness. The more fiercely we battle them, the more powerful they become." Minho called out from across the chamber. "Got it. Your weapons are back online." The moment he said it, the ship's lights brightened, and the Veltari weapons began glowing with renewed energy. The alien warriors looked at Minho with something approaching worship. "You have given us back our ability to fight," Culveth said. "But I fear it may not be enough. The Nexus horde grows larger with each passing moment." Hannah looked out through the damaged hull at the writhing mass of shadow creatures surrounding them. There were hundreds of them now, maybe thousands, all waiting to continue their feast. "Then we need a better plan than just fighting them," she said. The space around them suddenly filled with darkness. What had been a manageable fight against dozens of shadow creatures became a nightmare as hundreds more appeared from the depths of space. They moved like a black tide, flowing toward both the Veltari ship and the distant horizon. "Where did they all come from?" Minho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Calveth's face showed grim understanding. "The main horde has arrived. We were only fighting their scouts before. Now the true battle begins." Through the damaged hull, Hana could see the Nexus creatures swarming over the horizon. Captain Kang's voice crackled over their communication system, filled with static and panic. "Lieutenant Kim, our power systems are failing. These things are draining our energy just by touching the hull." The shadow creatures weren't just numerous now, they were larger, more aggressive. Some of them had grown to the size of small buildings, with dozens of writhing tentacles that could tear through metal like paper. The smaller ones moved in coordinated groups, working together with terrifying intelligence. "They're not just mindless beasts," Hana realized. "They're organized, like an army." Calveth nodded grimly. "The Nexus share a collective consciousness. Every creature you see is part of a single vast mind, and that mind learns from every battle, growing smarter and stronger." The Veltari warriors were fighting desperately, their energy weapons cutting through shadow creatures with beams of bright light. But for every Nexus they destroyed, two more took its place. Worse, Hana noticed something disturbing about the battle. "Calveth, your warriors, they're getting angry, aren't they?" "Of course. We are Veltari. We fight with the fury of righteous battle. But look at the creatures. Every time your people get more aggressive, the Nexus seem to grow stronger." Calveth paused in his fighting to observe what Hana was seeing. She was right. When a Veltari warrior roared in battle rage and charged forward, the nearby shadow creatures seemed to pulse with new energy. Their movements became faster, their attacks more vicious. "By the ancient stars," Calveth breathed. "You are correct, human. Our warrior spirit feeds them." Sumin, who had been monitoring her medical scanner, looked up with alarm. "It's not just anger. I'm reading massive spikes in neural activity from all the Veltari. Every strong emotion, fear, rage, determination, it's all being absorbed by those creatures. That's why they attack warrior races," Hana said, the pieces falling into place. "They don't just want to consume worlds. They want to consume the strongest emotions, the most passionate fighters. The Veltari are perfect prey for them." A massive shadow fell over them as something enormous blocked out the stars. Hana looked up to see a Nexus ship, unlike anything they had encountered before. It was vast, organic-looking, with a surface that seemed to writhe and pulse like living tissue. Smaller shadow creatures poured from openings along its sides like insects from a disturbed nest. "The mothership," Calveth said quietly. "I have only seen it once before, when they destroyed my homeworld. It is the heart of the Nexus Collective, where their ancient consciousness dwells." Minho was studying the massive vessel through his scanner. "The energy readings from that thing are off the charts. It's not just controlling the other creatures, it's feeding them power, making them stronger." "Then that's what we need to destroy," Hana said. "Impossible," Calveth replied. "The mothership is heavily defended. Even if a strike force could somehow penetrate its defenses, the neural energy inside would drive any warrior insane within moments. It is a fortress of pure thought and nightmare." But Somin was looking at her medical readings with growing excitement. "Wait, Hana, remember how the neural stimulant worked on Calveth? Our human biochemistry is different from theirs. What if our thought patterns are different too?" "What are you thinking? The Nexus feed on aggressive emotions, right? But humans think differently than the Veltari. We're not just warriors. We're problem solvers, creators, dreamers. Our neural patterns might be completely foreign to them." Calveth looked skeptical. "You suggest that humans could resist the mothership's influence where Veltari cannot?" "Maybe," Hana said, her mind racing. "But how would we get close enough to do any damage?" Minho pulled up schematics of the mothership on his scanner. "There, that structure at the center. It looks like some kind of neural core. If we could plant a disruptor device there, it might shut down their collective consciousness." "A suicide mission," Calveth said bluntly. No one who enters that vessel returns. The very air inside is toxic to thinking minds. My finest warriors volunteer for this honor, announced another Veltari who had approached them. We will die gloriously in battle against the heart of darkness. No, Hana said firmly. If I'm right about human neural patterns being different, sending your warriors would only make the Nexus stronger. Their battle fury would feed the collective consciousness. Then what do you propose, human? Hana looked at the mothership, at the writhing mass of shadow creatures, at her two human companions who had followed her into this impossible situation. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a physical force. I go alone. Hana. No, Somin said immediately. We don't even know if your theory is correct. Then we test it. But if someone has to make this sacrifice, it should be someone whose mind might actually have a chance of surviving long enough to complete the mission. The stealth pod was barely large enough for one person, built for reconnaissance missions, not infiltrating alien nightmare ships. Hana checked her equipment one final time, the neural disruptor device, her emergency oxygen supply, and a simple plasma cutter that seemed pathetically small compared to the Veltari weapons. Are you certain about this, human Hana? Calveth asked through the communication system. Even the mighty Veltari warrior's voice carried doubt and concern. No, she answered honestly, but it's our only chance. Somin's face appeared on her small screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Hana, please reconsider. We could find another way. There is no other way. You've seen the readings. That mothership is producing more shadow creatures every minute. Soon there will be too many for anyone to stop. Minho's voice came through the speaker. I've programmed the pod systems to mask your life signs as much as possible. But once you're inside that thing, we won't be able to communicate with you. Hana took a deep breath and launched the pod toward the massive organic vessel. As she got closer, the mothership's true size became apparent. It was like flying toward a living mountain, its surface covered in what looked like veins and arteries, pulsing with dark energy. The pod's stealth systems worked perfectly. She slipped through the swarm of shadow creatures undetected, finding an opening that looked like a mouth in the ship's hull. The moment she passed through, everything changed. The air inside was thick and warm, feeling more like breathing soup than gas. Her pod's lights revealed walls that moved and shifted like the inside of some enormous creature. Everything was alive here. The floors, the ceilings, even the air itself seemed to have a consciousness. Okay, Hana, she whispered to herself. Stay calm. Find the neural core, plant the device, get out. But staying calm became nearly impossible as she moved deeper into the ship. The walls began showing her things, images that appeared and disappeared like twisted dreams. She saw the destruction of worlds, the screaming of billions of creatures as their thoughts were consumed, the endless hunger of the Nexus collective. Her head began to throb. The images weren't just on the walls anymore. They were inside her mind. She saw her own memories being pulled apart and examined, her childhood on Earth, her training as an officer, her first day commanding the horizon. The Nexus consciousness was trying to read her thoughts, to understand what she was. You are different, a voice said inside her head. It wasn't words, but pure meaning transmitted directly to her brain. Your patterns are chaotic, unpredictable. This causes discomfort. Hana forced herself to keep moving forward. The neural disruptor felt heavy in her hand, and the path ahead seemed to stretch forever. The organic corridors twisted and turned, leading deeper into the heart of the ship. Strange creatures moved in the shadows around her, not the shadow beings she had seen outside, but something else entirely. They looked like the remains of other species the Nexus had consumed, their bodies partially dissolved and rebuilt into new forms. Some still had recognizable features, faces that might have once belonged to thinking beings from across the galaxy. So many voices, the collective consciousness whispered in her mind. So many thoughts consumed. But yours fights back. How curious. The neural pressure was getting stronger. Hana felt her own thoughts becoming fuzzy, her memories starting to blur together. She stopped and pulled out the emergency stimulant Somin had given her, the same type they had used to save Calveth. The injection cleared her head immediately. Whatever made human biochemistry different from the Veltari, it was also protecting her from the worst effects of the Nexus mental attacks. Impossible, the voice in her head hissed. Your resistance grows stronger, not weaker. What manner of creature are you? I'm human, Hana said out loud, surprised to find her voice steady. And humans don't give up. She reached a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. The neural core rose before her like a twisted tree made of living metal and flesh. Thousands of thin tendrils connected it to every part of the vessel, pulsing with the thoughts and memories of countless consumed worlds. As she approached, the core began to glow brighter. The collective consciousness was focusing all its attention on her now, trying to understand how a single small being could resist its power. You cannot destroy us, the voice said, now coming from all around her. We are eternal. We have consumed civilizations that spanned galaxies. Your tiny mind will join the chorus of the consumed. Hana attached the neural disruptor to the base of the core. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from the massive mental pressure pressing down on her consciousness. She could feel the device beginning to work, sending out waves of disruption that made the entire ship shudder. What? What is this pain? The collective voice screamed. Stop! You do not understand what you are doing. But Hana did understand. As the disruptor worked, she could feel something changing in the ship around her. The consumed creatures in the shadows were beginning to remember who they used to be. The collective consciousness was fracturing, breaking apart into thousands of individual voices. The mothership began to convulse around her like a dying beast. Hana had succeeded, but now she was trapped inside a vessel that was tearing itself apart from the inside. The neural disruptor activated with a sound like breaking glass, echoing through dimensions. Suddenly, Hana wasn't just inside the mothership anymore. She was inside the collective mind of the Nexus itself. The experience hit her like diving into an ocean of pure thought. Millions of voices screamed at once. Ancient memories from 1,000 different worlds crashed into her consciousness. She saw the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, all filtered through the hungry perspective of the Nexus collective. But something was wrong with their perfect system. Error, pattern recognition failure. The collective voice stuttered, no longer smooth and confident. This organism's thoughts do not follow acceptable parameters. Hana's human mind was like a virus in their organized system. Where the Nexus expected logical, predictable patterns, they found chaos. Her thoughts jumped randomly from childhood memories to mathematical equations to half-remembered songs. One moment she was thinking about her mother's cooking, the next about the technical specifications of her ship's engines. Cannot process creative randomness, the collective consciousness wailed. Thought patterns make no logical sense. The Nexus had consumed countless warrior races like the Veltari, beings whose minds followed clear patterns of honor, duty, and battle. They had devoured the thoughts of highly logical species, creatures whose every decision was based on careful calculation. But humans were different. Hana found herself laughing, and that simple human emotion sent shockwaves through the collective mind. Laughter was something the Nexus had never encountered, an emotion that served no survival purpose, that existed purely for joy. What is this response to absurdity? The voices asked in confusion. Why does this organism express pleasure at meaningless patterns? Her laughter triggered a memory of watching comedy shows with her friends back on Earth. That memory led to thinking about friendship, which the Nexus also couldn't understand. They knew about pack hunting and tribal loyalty, but the human concept of choosing to care about someone for no practical reason was completely alien to them. Love, Hana said out loud, and the word rippled through the collective consciousness like acid. Compassion, art, music, dreams. Each concept she named caused more damage to their hive mind. The Nexus existed to consume and survive, nothing more. They couldn't process the idea of beings who created beautiful things for no reason, who helped strangers without expecting reward, who dreamed of impossible futures just for the joy of imagining. The ship around her began to shake violently. Cracks appeared in the organic walls as the collective consciousness tried to force her chaotic thoughts into their organized system. But human creativity was like water. It flowed around every barrier they put up, finding new paths they hadn't anticipated. Make it stop, the voices screamed, Remove the chaos pattern, it is corrupting our unity. But they couldn't remove her thoughts without destroying themselves. The neural disruptor had created a permanent link between Hana's mind and their collective consciousness. Every random human thought, every creative impulse, every emotional response was spreading through their entire network like an infection. The consumed creatures throughout the ship began to stir. For the first time in centuries, individual personalities started to emerge from the collective. A warrior from a distant world remembered his name. A scientist recalled the joy of discovery. An artist began to dream of colors that had been forgotten. No, the unity breaks apart. The collective voice was weakening, becoming fragmented. Individual thoughts returning, cannot maintain control. Hana felt the neural backlash building like a storm inside her head. The disruptor was working too well, creating a feedback loop that was tearing apart not just the Nexus collective, but potentially her own mind as well. She could feel her consciousness being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. Through the chaos, she held onto one clear thought, her purpose. She had come here to save her friends, to save the Veltari, to stop the Nexus from consuming more worlds. That single thread of determination kept her grounded as reality warped around her. The mothership was dying, its organic systems failing as the collective consciousness collapsed. The walls were dissolving, the atmosphere was becoming toxic, and gravity itself seemed to be fluctuating wildly. Hana knew she should be trying to escape, but she couldn't move. The neural backlash had paralyzed her body while her mind fought. To maintain some kind of coherent existence, "You have destroyed us," the collective voice whispered, now barely audible. "But you destroy yourself as well. Was this sacrifice worth the cost?" Hana smiled, even though she couldn't be sure if the smile was real or just a thought echoing through the collective consciousness. Every life we save is worth any cost. That simple statement, that uniquely human belief in the value of individual existence, delivered the final blow to the Nexus hive mind. They had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that would sacrifice everything for strangers, that valued the lives of others above their own survival. The collective consciousness shattered like glass, sending shockwaves through space that would be felt across multiple star systems. And at the center of the destruction, Hana's small human mind held onto consciousness by the thinnest of threads, wondering if she would live to see the results of her sacrifice. The explosion started deep inside Hana's mind and rippled outward through dimensions that had no names. It wasn't just energy or light. It was pure understanding, flowing through the neural networks that connected every Nexus creature across the galaxy. For the first time in 1,000 years, the shadow creatures stopped moving. Floating in the wreckage of the mothership, Hana felt something incredible happening around her. The neural disruptor had done more than just break apart the collective consciousness. It had somehow reached back through time, touching the very core of what the Nexus had once been. In her fading awareness, she saw their true history. Long ago, the Nexus had been called the Empathy, a peaceful species that could share thoughts and emotions across vast distances. They lived on beautiful worlds, covered in crystal cities that sang with the harmony of millions of connected minds. They were explorers and teachers, spreading knowledge and compassion throughout their corner of the galaxy. Then came the Great Silence. A cosmic disaster had torn through their space, not a war or invasion, but something far worse. A wave of psychic energy from a dying star had swept across their worlds, severing the neural connections that held their civilization together. In an instant, billions of minds that had never known loneliness were suddenly, terrifyingly alone. Trauma broke them. In their desperate hunger to reconnect, to feel whole again, they had begun consuming the thoughts of other species. What started as a cry for help became an addiction, and the addiction became a way of life. Over centuries, they forgot what they had once been, becoming the parasitic collective that terrorized the galaxy. But Hana's human empathy was changing everything. As her consciousness spread through their network, she didn't just understand their pain, she felt it as if it were her own. The loneliness, the fear, the desperate need to connect with other minds. For the first time since the Great Silence, someone truly understood what they had lost. "You weren't evil," she whispered through the neural link, her thought echoing to every Nexus creature in existence. "You were just lonely." That single word, lonely, transformed everything. Across space, shadow creatures began to change. Their writhing darkness dissolved like smoke, revealing the beings they had once been. They were tall and graceful, with skin that glowed softly and eyes filled with ancient wisdom. The Empathi were returning. On the Veltari ship, Calveth watched, in amazement, as the shadow creatures attacking his vessel simply stopped fighting. Their forms shimmered and changed, becoming something entirely different. Where once there had been monsters, now stood beings of light who looked around in confusion and wonder. "By the ancient stars," he breathed, "what has the human done?" Somin was monitoring the energy readings from the mothership's explosion. "It's incredible," she said, her voice filled with awe. "The neural wave is spreading faster than light somehow, reaching across multiple star systems. It's like Hana's. Thoughts are traveling through some kind of psychic dimension. On worlds throughout the galaxy, the transformation continued. Nexus hives that had existed for centuries suddenly bloomed into gardens of crystal and light. The consumed creatures, within them, were freed, their original personalities restored. Species that had been thought extinct for generations walked free again, blinking in amazement at their liberation. The explosion's light reached distant observation stations, where shocked astronomers watched entire sectors of space change from darkness to brilliance in moments. Military commanders who had spent lifetimes fighting the Nexus threat saw their instruments register the impossible. Every hostile signature in their region was simply gone, replaced by peaceful energy patterns. On the Veltari homeworld, ancient warriors who had never known anything but war against the Nexus fell to their knees as they watched the transformation through their telescopes. The enemy that had haunted their nightmares for 1,000 years was becoming something beautiful. But the most incredible change was happening to Hana herself. As her empathy spread through the neural network, she absorbed not just the Nexus's pain, but also their joy. She felt the happiness of billions of freed minds reconnecting with their true selves. She experienced the wonder of the empathy as they remembered their lost civilization and began to rebuild it. The neural backlash that should have destroyed her mind instead filled it with the most beautiful chorus imaginable, the voices of countless beings singing together in harmony. They were no longer a collective consciousness driven by hunger, but a true community connected by choice and love. Through the psychic link, she felt their gratitude washing over her like warm sunlight. Every empathy in the galaxy now knew her name, her sacrifice, her gift of understanding that had saved them all from their corruption. The explosion's final wave reached the edge of known space, carrying with it a message that every telepathic species in the galaxy would receive. The long war was over. The darkness had been transformed into light, and it had all started with one human woman who chose to see monsters as beings in pain rather than enemies to be destroyed. As the transformation completed itself, Hana's consciousness began to fade. But she wasn't afraid. She had felt the universe change, had experienced the joy of countless beings set free. Whatever happened to her now, she knew it had been worth every moment. Consciousness returned to Hana slowly, like emerging from the deepest sleep she had ever experienced. The first thing she noticed was the sound, a gentle humming that seemed to vibrate through her bones. The second thing was the smell, clean and metallic with a hint of something like ozone. Her eyes opened to see a ceiling made of what looked like living crystal, pulsing with soft blue light. This definitely wasn't the Horizon's medical bay. "She awakens," a familiar deep voice said. Hana turned her head carefully and saw Calveth standing beside her bed. The Veltari warrior looked different somehow, more peaceful, with less tension in his powerful frame. "How am I alive?" Hana's voice came out as barely a whisper. Her throat felt raw, as if she had been screaming for hours. "That is a question that has puzzled our finest healers for 3 days," Calveth replied. "Biol writes the neural feedback from the mothership should have destroyed your mind completely. Yet here you are, speaking coherently and showing no signs of permanent damage." Somin's face appeared in Hana's vision, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We thought we had lost you. Your brain activity was so chaotic that our medical equipment couldn't even get stable readings. But something was protecting you, keeping your consciousness intact. The empathy," Hana said, the memories flooding back. "They were shielding me somehow, weren't they?" Minho nodded from across the room. "The former Nexus creatures, they're calling themselves the empathy now. They've been sending messages to every ship in this sector. They say you saved them from a corruption that had lasted for over 1,000 years. Hana tried to sit up, but her body felt weak and unsteady. Somin gently helped her, adjusting the bed so she could see more of the room. It was clearly Veltari architecture, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to grow rather than being built. "Where are we?" "The Veltari flagship Eternal Honor," Calveth explained. "After the transformation, representatives from every major civilization began arriving to learn what had happened. This ship was chosen as neutral ground for the gathering. Gathering? Before anyone could answer, the room's entrance dilated open, and beings unlike anything Hana had ever imagined began filing in. Some walked on multiple legs, others floated through the air. One creature looked like a living tree, with eyes scattered across its bark, while another resembled a cloud of intelligent gas held together by electromagnetic fields. "Representatives from 47 different species," Somin said in amazement. "They've all come to see you." A tall, graceful being that glowed with soft light stepped forward. This was clearly one of the transformed empathy, beautiful and serene, in a way that reminded Hana of ancient statues. "Human Hana Kim," the being said, its voice like music in her mind rather than words in her ears. "I am Zephyra, speaker for the Empathy Collective. We have come to express our gratitude for your gift of understanding." "I just did what anyone would do," Hana said weakly. "No," rumbled a massive creature covered in stone-like plates. "What you did was beyond the comprehension of most species. You chose to feel compassion for your enemies, to see past their actions to their pain." Another alien, this one resembling a giant butterfly with crystalline wings, added, "The Chromax Coalition has been fighting the Nexus for 300 years. In a single day, you accomplished what our combined fleets could not achieve in 3 centuries. Minho was recording everything with his scanner, his eyes wide with excitement. "Hana, do you realize what this means? You're the first human to make contact with dozens of alien civilizations. You've basically introduced our entire species to the galactic community. The human demonstration of empathy has challenged our understanding of conflict resolution," said a being that looked like living liquid metal. "The Techarchy wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with your species to learn more about your unique psychological approaches." Calveth stepped forward, his voice carrying a formal tone that Hana had never heard before. "Human Hana Kim, the Veltari High Council has voted unanimously on a matter of great importance. Your actions have not only saved our people but ended a war that has consumed countless worlds. For this we wish to bestow upon you the highest honor our civilization can grant." "What kind of honor?" "The title of Supreme Queen of the Veltari Dominion. No outsider has ever been offered such a position. No one of any species has ever been deemed worthy of such recognition." The room fell completely silent. Even the gentle humming of the ship's systems seemed to pause. Hana looked around at the gathered representatives, seeing hope and admiration in dozens of different types of eyes. "I'm not a queen," she said finally. "I'm just a science officer who tried to do the right thing." "That," said Zephyra softly, "is exactly why you are worthy of the crown." Outside the ship's crystalline windows, Hana could see other vessels arriving, hundreds of them from across the galaxy. The news of the transformation was spreading, and it seemed like every species capable of space travel wanted to witness this historic moment. "The ceremony is being prepared as we speak," Calveth continued. "Representatives from across known space wish to attend. This will be the largest gathering of different species in recorded history." Hana closed her eyes, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. Just days ago, she had been conducting routine surveys. Now she was apparently about to become the first human queen of an alien empire. What exactly would a supreme queen do? She asked. Lead, Culveth said simply. Guide. Help us build a future where understanding triumphs over conflict. The ceremony hall aboard the Eternal Honor had been transformed into something beyond imagination. What was once a military briefing room now sparkled with technology from dozens of different civilizations. Holographic projectors from the Techarchy created floating displays of light, while empathy crystals sang harmonious melodies that seemed to touch the soul directly. Hana stood before a mirror made of liquid starlight, barely recognizing herself. The Veltari had provided ceremonial robes that shimmered with colors that had no names in human language. The fabric seemed alive, responding to her emotions by shifting through subtle patterns of silver and gold. You don't have to do this, Somin said quietly, standing beside her. Even now you could just ask them to take us home. Home to what? Hana replied, adjusting the strange but beautiful garments. After what we've seen, after what we've learned, how could we just go back to routine surveys and pretend the galaxy isn't full of incredible civilizations waiting to meet us? Minho was checking the broadcasting equipment that would transmit the ceremony across known space. The communication networks are reporting viewership numbers that don't make sense. Apparently, entire planets are shutting down normal activities. To watch this, through the chamber's entrance, Hana could hear the sounds of the gathering crowd. Translators worked frantically to coordinate between species that communicated through everything from sound waves to chemical releases to controlled electromagnetic pulses. Culveth appeared in the doorway, wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished stars. It is time, human Hanakim, the galaxy awaits. The procession began with the sound of Veltari war drums, but these weren't the harsh rhythms of battle. Instead, they played a pattern that spoke of victory through peace, of strength found in understanding rather than conquest. As Hana walked through the corridors of the ship, she passed representatives from civilizations she couldn't have imagined a week ago. The Helix Communion, beings of pure energy who had taken solid form just for this ceremony. The deep swimmers, aquatic creatures in environmental suits filled with the waters of their homeworld. Ancient tree-like beings called the Root Speakers, who had lived for thousands of years and claimed this was the most significant event they had ever witnessed. The ceremony hall itself took Hana's breath away. It had been expanded using space-folding technology, creating a vast amphitheater that seemed to stretch beyond the ship's physical boundaries. Thousands of beings filled the seats, while millions more watched through holographic projections and neural links. At the center of the hall stood an altar made from crystallized starlight, holding a crown unlike anything ever created. The crown of stars wasn't just jewelry. It was a living piece of technology, created by the combined efforts of every major civilization in attendance. Empathy crystals provided emotional resonance, Veltari metals gave it strength, and human engineering concepts helped bind it all together into something that could be worn by a biological being. Citizens of the galaxy, Culveth's voice boomed through the hall, somehow understood by every species present, despite their vastly different languages. We gather today to witness something unprecedented in the history of known space. The crowd fell silent. Even the usually chaotic background chatter of universal translators stopped as every being focused their attention on the ceremony. For 1,000 years we fought the darkness we called the Nexus. Entire civilizations dedicated themselves to this war. Countless lives were lost. Whole star systems became battlegrounds, and in all that time, no one thought to ask what the enemy truly was. Hana stepped forward toward the altar, feeling the weight of millions of eyes upon her. The crown seemed to pulse with inner light, as if responding to her presence. One human woman, Culveth continued, accomplished what our combined fleets could not. Not through superior weapons or tactical brilliance, but through the simple act of choosing to understand rather than destroy. The ceremony's climax approached as Zephyra, representing the transformed empathy, floated forward. Through her sacrifice we remember who we once were. Through her compassion we found the path home. Hana knelt before the altar, as representatives from each civilization stepped forward to place their blessing on the crown. The techarchy added processors that would help her understand any language instantly. The deep swimmers contributed sensors that would let her feel the emotional currents of any gathering. The root speakers wove in organic circuits that would help her make decisions based on the long-term good of all species. "Do you accept the responsibility of the crown of stars?" Kaliveth asked formally. "I accept it not as a ruler," Hana replied, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall, "but as a servant of peace, unity, and understanding." The crown settled onto her head with a sensation like warm sunlight. Immediately, she could feel the presence of every being in the hall. Not their thoughts, but their hopes, their dreams, their shared desire for a better future. "Queen Hana of the United Worlds," the assembly declared in unison, each species using their own method of expressing joy and celebration. Standing before the gathered representatives of galactic civilization, wearing a crown that sparkled with the light of stars, Hana Kim, former science officer from a small human research vessel, began to speak about the future she could see opening before them all. "Together," she said simply, "we can build something beautiful."